Hello students, let us evaluate a tiger in a zoo. We have a worksheet right before us where the answers are written in the narrative form instead of the analytic literature form. We are going to read the answer, then we are going to evaluate and we are going to correlate it with our textbook with adding citations. Let us begin with the very first question, that is describe the tiger in the cage. In the text that we have before us, it says the tiger in the cage is just a diminished form of his original self. He paces up and down in the cage restlessly. He's confined in the narrow cell and keeps staring the stars as if longing for freedom. He's helpless and draws pity for his condition. Now, this answer is in the pure narrative form, which, according to the latest CBSE sample answer scheme, does not qualify. So, how we need to rephrase is that we need to bring in the poet's name, that is Leslie Norris. Leslie Norris, in his poem "A Tiger in the Zoo," accentuates. Accentuate means to make it more prominent, emphasize a particular feature, something making more noticeable. So, accentuates the condition of the tiger in the cage, which is diminished, which where the tiger is in his diminished form of original self. The tiger is seemed to be pacing up and down in the cage restlessly. He is confined in the narrow cell and keeps staring the stars as if longing for freedom. The citations that we have before our eyes is that he hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares at with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So we can add little citations over here. He's confined in the narrow cell and keeps his brilliant eyes. We are adding the citation brilliant eyes from the text. He keeps his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars, longing for freedom, where brilliant eyes and brilliant stars are the citations. He is helpless and draws pity for his condition. It can be stated that he is helpless and draws pity for his condition. That is for a 2 marks answer. Describe the tiger in the wild. In the wild, the word in the wild means in the jungle. The text that we have before us is he should be snarling around houses at the jungle edge, barring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. That is the stanza that we have before us. And now let us see how we can change the text that is before us. So, the tiger in the wild is majestic. He is free and lies in the shades and hunts for prey. He moves near the water because food is in plenty there. Sometimes he growls and terrorizes the villagers. Now, the text that we have is he should be snarling around houses at the jungle edge, barring his firm. Now, this is more of an assumption in the text, whereas the text that is before us, the answer says that it states that the tiger is already in the wild. And the stated one, we have an assumption that he should be there. So now let us see how we can rewrite this answer. Leslie Norris, in his poem "A Tiger in the Zoo," projects tiger in the wild in a majestic manner. The tiger seems to be free and seems to be extending his ferocious fangs and claws, extending fear among the villagers. It is evident that the tiger is terrorizing the village. Here, terrorizing the village is the citation. Why does the tiger express his rage quietly? Now, the text that is before us, it says that the tiger expresses his rage quietly because there's nothing he can do from behind the bars of his cage. He's helpless as his strength now lies inside the cage. He's no longer free as he was in the jungle. Now we can see quiet. So we refer to the first stanza. He stalks in his vivid stripes a few steps off his cage on paths of velvet quiet in his quiet rage. That is the text we have to refer. So citations are to be taken from the first stanza. How do we begin now? Leslie Norris, in his poem "A Tiger in the Zoo," uh, ex- expresses the rage, the quiet rage. Quiet rage is the citation over here. Quiet rage of the tiger, of the striped tiger, striped of the vividly striped tiger. Vividly would be change of the word vivid stripes. So vividly striped tiger that was in the cage. Cage is again a citation. The tiger moved up and down. The tiger prowled up and down. Prowled up and down would be a more appropriate word in the cage helplessly. It is evident that the tiger was helpless as his strength now, remove the word now, so as his strength laid inside, was diminished inside the cage. It is evident that it can be said that it can be cited that the tiger was no longer free as he was in the jungle or at the jungle edge. At the jungle edge could be the citation used over here. Where should the tiger have been according to the poet? The text that we have before us, the poet thinks that the tiger should have been in the jungle, lurking in the shadow of the long grass, or prey on the deer near the waterhole. He should also be on the outskirts of the jungle, snarling around houses and terrifying villages. We have just read that he should be snarling around houses at the jungle edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. Now, reconstructing this would be Norris in his poem "A Tiger in the Zoo" projects the tiger lurking in the jungle, lurking in the open jungle, or lurking at the edge of the jungle, or lurking at the jungle's edge. Then jungle's edge would be the citation. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the water hole where plump deer pass. So now we have to use the citations from there. The poet projects the tiger lurking in the shadow, moving around or sliding around the long grass. So long grass would be the citation. Near the water hole, near the water hole is the citation. Where plum deer where plum deer pass is the citation. He should be moving freely on the outskirts of the village, inducing fear in the villagers, terrorizing the village or inducing fear in the villagers. Let us proceed to the next. How does the tiger make his presence felt in the village? Leslie Norris projects the tiger in the zoo as a ferocious animal, inducing or terrorizing the villagers. It can be said that the tiger made his presence felt by snarling around houses. Snarling around houses is the citation. At the jungle's edge, at the jungle's edge, yes, it can also be the citation. And by showing his white fangs and claws, yes. There are four citations over here. What does the tiger do in his cage? Leslie Norris, in his poem A Tiger in the Zoo, projects the helplessness of the tiger that was locked in a cell. The poet projects that the tiger was locked in a concrete cell. Locked in a concrete cell is the citation, where he could hardly take a few steps along the length of the cage. The length of the cage is the citation. He doesn't take any notice. It can be stated that he doesn't take any notice of the visitors who came, who visited the zoo. Needless to say that he ignored the visitors, ignoring, he kept on ignoring visitors, then ignoring visitors will become the citation. With his shining eyes, additionally, he stared at the night sky with his brilliant eyes. Additionally, he kept staring at the brilliant stars with his brilliant eyes. So, brilliant eyes and brilliant stars are the citations which are written in single quotes. Why do you think the tiger looks at the stars? Leslie Norris, in his poem A Tiger in the Zoo, uh, vividly paints the helplessness of the tiger in the cage. The tiger stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars with the hope that it will be free in the wild one day. It can be stated that staring at the stars gave the tiger hope and comfort that it will succeed in future. What is the effect of the repeated use of the word brilliant in the poem? In the last two lines, and stars with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. So, brilliant eyes and brilliant stars, the word brilliant is repeated. The repeated use of the brilliant shows the contrast. The brilliant stars are free while the brilliant eyes are inside the cage. So, now how do we reconstruct this? Leslie Norris, in his poem A Tiger in the Zoo, has uh, brought out a contrast in the last two verses of the poem, where he has used and stars with his brilliant eyes at the and stares at the brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars, where the brilliant eyes are encaged, encaged, while the brilliant stars are free and above and up in the sky. Now, the long questions where your PEE technique comes handy. PEE technique stands for P for point out, E for cite and evidence, and E is for explain. So we need to point out some quality, then cite certain citations, and then explain. When we are pointing out, we can use adjectives on our own, but when we are citing evidences, we need to bring in citations, and when we are explaining, there we can use fair, open narrative. So it's a combination of pointing, citing evidence, and explanation. Now let us look at the text that we have in front of us. Love for freedom is the natural instinct of every living being. Comment. The answer that we have is it is rightly said that love for freedom is the natural instinct of every living being. Now, if I were to give an opening sentence, I would say Leslie Norris in the poem A Tiger in the Zoo clearly states the message that Love for freedom is the natural instinct of every living being. Thus, the opening line is very much in place, and that the declarative line is also there. That means we are going to talk about freedom. It can be cited that everyone loves freedom and does not want to live in confinement. It can be stated that every living being loves freedom, and so does the tiger, and so does the vivid striped tiger in the cage. Similarly, the tiger also, we have mentioned this, okay? He was so fed up being caged that he even ignored the visitors. Additionally, it can be cited when you're bringing in additional citations, you can say additionally, it can be cited that the helplessness of the tiger is brought out in the last verse of the stanza where he stood by the cage ignoring visitors. Ignoring visitors is the citation. It is evident that the tiger walked up and down in the cage, trying to move away from the crowd. The tiger wanted to escape his captivity. This is an explanation. It can be said that the tiger wanted to escape this captivity. And then you can go on to explain that, in my opinion, I think, I feel, I believe, I strongly believe that God has made all living beings equal, and thus animals too have the right to have freedom. Animals should not be caged. It is their right to enjoy their natural habitat, that is the forest, and run freely in the wild. We should thus, it is expected that, avoid the word using of we, it is expected that the freedom should be respected and tigers should not be put in the zoo. So you can see how this answer was reconstructed using citations, pointers, citations, and the last part of the text we have taken it as our opinion, where we have used the opening line as I think, I feel, and I believe. Proceeding further, is it right to confine wild animals into cages? Why or why not? Now, it is again an opinion based question, an extrapolatory question where we may point to some qualities, give some citations, but more of the opinion is required. That means I think, I feel, and I believe. So, more weightage will be, or more world limit will be spent in our own explanations. Leslie Norris, in his poem, The Tiger in the Zoo, projects a wild animal encaged, depicting the freedom of an animal curbed down to captivity. It can be cited that the ferocious animal was brought down to helplessness. I think, or I feel, or I believe. Any one of the starting sentence frame can be used. I think, I feel, I believe. Wild animals are meant to live in the wild or in the forest. They are not meant to be engaged and displayed in the zoo. It is strongly believed that the majestic species of uh, tiger is on the verge of extinction. There used to be a time that they used to roam proudly. It is the time where the animals used to prowl proudly, freely in the jungle seems to be an event of the past. It can also be stated that these animals cannot live in confinement. It is against their nature. They need to have the right, they need to be given their right of freedom like other animals, as it is evident that confinement leads to depression and misery. Thus, the animals are on the verge of decline. The species is on the verge of decline. Moreover, their offsprings lose the hunting capabilities as they are not trained to hunt in the wild. As a result, they would not be able to feed themselves independently. Furthermore, confining wild animals disturb the whole ecological balance. It is thus evident that, that the animals should be let free in the wild where they belong, that is the forest and not the cage. The students need to construct their own answers and come up with their own responses using the citations. That is very, very important. Thank you very much. Kindly practice while writing so that the answers fall naturally in place.